thinking, you know what? That's really not me. I don't do that. I don't feel that. I just don't naturally do that. I think something else is more important. My skills are resting somewhere else. My competence is in something else, and I don't want to do it. Now, if I don't do it, I'm thinking, well, do I still call myself a coach? And if I don't call myself a coach, well, what do I call myself? How do I explain who I am? Okay. So, and that's the reason my card reads like this. It's my name and my number. I don't have a title. I cannot find a title that already exists in this world that adequately describes who I am. So I'm not going to put it there. Why should I restrict myself, who I am, the way I am, to some predefined thing of which I don't fit into? Because if you give yourself a label, you think you have to align your identity with that label. You behave what is expected of that label so that when somebody sees you, yeah, but you don't, a coach doesn't do that. So I don't want anything like that. So I'm not a coach. So I can do anything. And that just sort of stops the question, stops the challenges. And why should I do and what should I not? Well, this is what I do. These are the kind of things these are the approaches I take. Okay. And all I care about is whether it works. Does it create the right result for the person I'm trying to create value for? So if I talk to a student after the conversation, whichever approach I take, does it result in the student having a little bit more clarity? Does it result in the student having a little bit more motivation? Does it result in the student having a little bit more courage? And if it does, I consider that working. And the person who judges it is not me. It's the person I'm having a conversation with. And for most cases, I think the feedback is yes, it works to some degree. And a lot of times, there's a big part that I don't say anything. I just like now Anson, I sense that there's more coming. I want to hear it. There's something from him that says, I want to say it. So I recognize those moments. I'm going to say, keep talking. A big part of discovery is to materialize your thoughts. And a big part of people not materializing the thought is they don't find the right environment supportive enough for them to say that this is a worthy thing to say. And if you don't say it, it remains as a little electrical impulse in your thought, which is it's gone. Okay. A lot of people don't write diaries. A lot of people don't record their own voice. And so the thoughts come and go. It may not even register in your memory, but that thought may be really important. That thought may be the thought that is going to open and unlock a piece of awareness that if you had, it changes the way you think and act, and therefore behavior, outcome, result, destiny. So I never underestimate creating that space for the person next to me. A lot of times, I don't have a solution, but they have. I just need to allow them to express that solution to somebody. And once they come out, they say, did I just say that? Did I just say that? Wow, you know? And how is this, for some people coaching, they think that, oh, coach, you should be asking the most powerful questions. You should be leading them. I say, no. What I could do is 1,000,001 things. I don't know which one yet. I need to see what this person needs. Some people, they're naturally, they don't want to talk about things. So they want you to give them guidance. So I said, okay, I'll give you some perspectives. Let's work on it together. Some people have a lot of things that they want to say, but they're afraid to say it. I'm thinking, okay, well, how can I create a space that give them the comfort to say it? And it's almost always a floodgate. You open a floodgate, it just comes out. How comfortable does that feel? Right? And so when I was listening to what you're saying, it's not that I've never heard some of the things you said, but I never heard it strung together in such a complete way, the way you just described. I thought there was a really powerful expression of your experience and possibly representing similar experience of someone similar to your age and stage of life, graduating a few years, came out, tried something, isn't really a thing, wondering what else is out there, too afraid to try something that is totally brand new, don't know what to expect. Will I survive? Will I have enough money to pay rent, food on the table? I mean, those are very realistic existential questions that needs to get answered, right? And I think, there's a lot of value for people to know. Yeah.
I think for the first thing, right? I think what I want to say is the part where on not restraining yourself with different role. I think that's actually one of the most, I think, key idea that I think we share, because like you with your relationship with the word coaching, I think I also, and I think I found a lot of my peers also have, is to conform to what you're supposed to do. So a lot of time there are things that can be done in a way that you like to do, and it will get you a similar result. For example, I'm tutoring. I teach some of the kids I teach are in high school. Parents obviously think you're a tutor. What you should do is to get them homework, help them understand concept, essentially force them to go through more exercise so that they can become better at exam. I'm not saying every parent does that, but more or less that's a request that I would get from them, right? But if I follow what a tutor is supposed to do, that would be what I believe too, because at the very least, the word tutoring means that you are guiding them to learn, right? But it never really worked for me in a sense that I can force that, but why can't you just force it yourself too? The parents could have just done the same thing, give them the exercise and force them to do it. There's so much online resources, and it's not like tutor have their unique database. Well, okay, I do have a collection of my things, but if you really look into it, it's not that hard to find resources to help your kid. Just go for it. If you hire a tutor for their resources, don't do it. I'm like, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit like dancing if I'm one here, but like, don't do it for the resources. There's so much online free resources, even for the paid one. Just go for it. You don't need us for that. But what you really need us to do, on the other hand, is to motivate your kid to learn. And that's actually a different task. It's something that you can't just conform to a role and say, I'm just going to do it this way. There's no one way to do it. Like you say, the kid might, there are kids that are lack self-esteem. The one that I teach, he needed a friend to listen to him. He needed someone to tell him that he is okay, that he is doing a good job. He need that boost of confidence. He need that boost of friendship for him to stabilize himself so that he can go study himself. I would literally, I mean, I feel like I'm like scamming people money, but for that kid, I'm not even teaching him anything in the academic sense, because he actually is very good at learning. He knows how to learn. He knows how to take notes. He knows how to get a point down. but he is not comfortable with doing it himself because he's scared. And what he needs is I suppose, a brother figure to sit there next to him and say, "No, do it with you. You fail, I'm gonna catch you there." And that's just enough to actually empower the student. And so going back to the point, I think just because even if we are not talking about choosing an alternative path or straying off path, a lot of time not being confined by the role, actually, at least for me, my experience would tell me that might actually allow you to do it better, because for two facts. One, you might not be talented in doing things the traditional way or the well-defined way. Not everyone are good at forcing their student to actually study and go through practices. And B, the student, or okay, in this case, whoever you're working with or things that you're working on, might have another solution that is actually better fit than the traditional way. And if we are conformed by roles and what should we do, and just do it the way we should be doing, what end up happening is, again, from my experience, is a mediocre job. It's not like you can't do it, but the job will not be good. And it's not something that you can say, point at that and say, "I did that," because you won't be that proud of it. Not necessarily the case, but my experience again, right? So that's one. I think, don't get conformed by a job title or a role, really, because it might not work. And we might want to consider that there are other ways of making things work. And we should do things case by case. So that's number one, right? And sorry, I'm just thinking. I think regarding the sharing that I just did, and what you say is powerful, I think it sort of loops back to the idea of authenticity, because sometimes, like, I think a lot of us are lacking that kind of conversation, the one that you are allowed to open the floodgates and actually just let it all pour out. And I think that might be another hidden meaning, not really hidden, but another reason why we want to do this here, just me and you, Kevin, because I think what we're demonstrating here is sort of how to host an authentic conversation that allows yourself and the other person to just pour out what they want to pour out. And obviously, learning the rules are not that hard. Knowing the rules are not that hard. To be respectful, to be a good listener, active listening. Go online and you probably search a whole lot of advice on how to do it. But to see someone doing it, I sort of remember the time where I first talked with you, like 5 years ago almost. Yeah, almost 5 years ago. The authenticity that came off from you is what touched me. I mean, I remember later you say you sort of know that I will come back for more conversation. I don't know if you remember that part, but I think now I think back, right, and the reason why I felt that it was not actually just the conversation between you and me. It was the conversation I see you doing with the other peer that were present at the moment that we met. And I can feel how real you are as a person to them, trying to be as vulnerable and as bare, as naked as possible. And so that you allow people to talk in the way that they want to talk, instead of, well, because they see an armor on you, they will put on one for themselves too. That willingness to be vulnerable creates authenticity, and but with authenticity comes valuable conversation that not only allow the person to express themselves, but also allow the person who are listening to it to grow, because now you see, you learn you learn something from someone. It could be minor from your perspective, but you learn regardless. And I think this is what this conversation, at least this talk, is valuable for. Not to harsh sell it, it's just really what I feel. To demonstrate, what a real conversation can do. And hopefully, if someone sees it and actually will say, oh, that's how you do it. Or, oh, I want to do that. If we can make people think that way, oh, that oh something moment. If that can happen, I think is sort of like a worthwhile for me to put in effort to, or for us to put in effort to make this video. It's not like you don't put in anything. So yeah, that's all I got for now.
Yeah, it's I think the way you see me is not something that I deliberately want to do. Is I think it is what I want to see other people doing, because I enjoy real stories, real feelings about how they look at certain things and how they experience certain things, because I don't know, there's something rare about truth. And you always want to get something that is rare, don't you? I mean, a diamond is rare, gold is rare, and rarity in itself, there is a certain draw to it. And if you think about our day-to-day lives and experiences, there are many things we're not proud of ourselves. Many things we think that we are flawed, that we're inadequate. But the fact is, there will always be those things. If it's not that thing, it will be something else. And it's never going to be the so-called perfect, because it doesn't exist. Okay. The minute you find something is good, then relative to something else, that thing would not be as good. And so our mind is powerful because it's a problem-seeking missile. It's always looking for the next problem to solve. And the way to solve it is to keep engaging and keep magnifying the relative problem in the forefront of your mind, so that it has something to chase. And your mind is always craving stimulation, as you know. A lot of people cannot sit still for a minute. If I ask the person to just say, okay, can we sit here? And the person says, okay, so what are we doing? Nothing. Can we sit here do nothing? So what do you mean do nothing? You mean nothing, nothing? I said, yeah, nothing, nothing. Then why? So they can't even stay here for a minute without questioning. Why do we need to stay here, do nothing for a minute, as if everything needs to be 100% occupied? And that is the power of the brain, the desire to be stimulated. Okay. Now, if you're aware of this, just think about any machine, and the brain is no different than any machine. If you need to work the machine all the time, what's going to happen? The temperature goes up, wear and tear, lots of energy required, and depends on what the machine is, right? Maybe it's a very high performance machine, and It might still work, but is it working optimally? Could it have worked better if it was a cooler machine? Could it have worked better if it was intermittently shut down for a short maintenance break? Okay. These are just questions. I'm not saying it would. I'm saying that would it? And to answer the question, there's no other way except to try it and see if the alternative, relatively speaking, is better. And I sort of, I'm in a camp that I don't really believe in anything per se, but I'm interested to hear all sorts of theories and whatever. And if I am interested in that enough, then I'll design an experiment to try it myself, to experience it. Because the word believe is a very polite way of saying I don't know. I mean, how else can I explain this? I believe. So you don't know then? I don't know, but I believe it's true. Well, on what basis? Well, I read the news. I heard somebody said it. They said it's their personal experience. Okay. And they are a credible person. They would not lie to me. So these are all the foundation of the belief. Or I read a book once said this. It's a belief. Okay. Doesn't matter how amazingly authoritative that book is, but if you never experience it and you just read it, what is it? Well, it's a piece of history. That's what it is, factually. Something that happened before, something wrote down, something what happened before, that's history. Any book is a history book to some degree. Depends on what kind of history we're talking about. So my question is, are you living based on history? Is your knowledge just history? And if it is so, aren't you just repeating history? Your life is just a repeating history. Just think about the logic, right? Everything that we learn from a book, everything that is in a book is written by somebody else who's done something else before that they think it worked. This is knowledge. We call it knowledge, but it's also history. So we are to some degree perpetuating history if that's all we do. I'm not here to say history is worthless. No, not at all. It is worth as much as everything else. But it's not the only thing that is worth something. So history would be very useful working in conjunction with what we're seeing right now that is called the current objective reality. And we try to look at the relationship between the two things. Does it gel with this work? Is it optimal? And it's a very mentally draining exercise if you have to ask a question for every single decision you make every day, do you? So a lot of times we don't. We habitualize things, okay? So, and I think, and that follows through, our education system, how we're being taught. So it is natural when we leave that system, let's say university or whatever, that stays with you, at least for a while. And if nobody challenges it, and if you don't challenge it, and a company and whatever doesn't challenge it, then it's natural that this is going to go deeper into your thinking and your mindset, right? And your beliefs. And it's very then difficult to jump out of that to do something that is deviating from that so-called mainstream of thought. And that's why I think it explains why so few people would do something like what you have chosen to do, because it's uncomfortable. There's uncertainty, and naturally we seek safety and security for survival reasons. And most of our parents would support that rather than you potentially doing something that is less stable, than that. And you can understand why a parent would encourage more stability than less, right? So At the end of the day, freedom has a price. Um, Doing the things you want and walking the path you want has a price. There are a few prices to consider. One, not everyone is going to like it. Not everyone's going to approve it. In fact, most people don't. So you're going to hear noises that are saying that don't do this, or they well, some are kinder than others in terms of the way they express themselves. So be prepared for that. Secondly, there are consequences in which you cannot 100% be prepared for. Some of them possibly are coming, but others you would only experience it once it materializes as a result of your actions. Part of that is inexperience. Part of that is just not knowing what you're doing. And it is a necessary stage to go through in order to learn the things you need to learn to navigate this new environment called freedom and walking your own path. And like any path, right? So let's say if you go on a walk in nature and there's a trail that is well trodden on and it's clear, there's no growth, okay? Literally, pardon the pun, there's no growth, as in things growing on it. But it's kind of like busy, other people on it, because it's well trodden on both sides of the traffic. And you just, and on a holiday, and it's going to be bumping into people, okay? It's okay to walk on it, but you're not going to find tranquility. You're not going to find amazing views that no one has ever seen because it's a well-trodden path. You know what to expect, basically. But if you're always wondering, well, what's it like if I go up this little path? It's not well-trodden at all. But you could walk in it, but you have to struggle a little bit. Okay. There are lots of things sticking out. You might catch your pants, maybe slippery, maybe it's a little bit steep, maybe you have to climb a little bit. You don't know where it's going to head, and you might have to turn back halfway because you can't go on any further and kind of waste the effort. That's kind of very similar to if you want to choose your own path, define your own thing that you want to do, or what I want to do as Kevin without a title. What can I do? Well, I can be anything I want. I can be a busker. Right now, I'm busking and I'm doing student one-on-one. Could I be doing something different tomorrow? Is neither of the above? Yes. What is it? I don't know. I mean, I'll figure it out when I get there. But what is to say that if I combine busking and consulting, or whatever the thing I'm doing, what if I combine those two things? What kind of things would come out of that? Right now, I cannot imagine it because the opportunity has not presented itself yet. But maybe one day it could. Maybe one day I combine the two things that I love the most, and I think, wow, I can do both at the same time. How amazing is that? But I cannot imagine it right now. But if I keep these things in mind and I'm looking to get myself building up the sensitivity to that, right? That when these opportunities come by, I can sense them. Then I know how to present myself. Then I'll know what to say yes to, what to say no to. And I think building up the sensitivity to say yes to the things that I'm more likely to like is also a skill that you build up over time. Okay. And the better you build up your sensitivity to the things that you actually would gravitate towards, the quicker you find those things, because you're saying to the right things more often as you go on with your life, right? But it's not going to come to you on the first day. You're going to have to say to a lot of things that are yes, and find out, okay, well, actually it's not. Well, then it's okay. Then put that down as experience, as things that, okay, well, next time I come, I'm going to say no to that. But something new, I'm going to say yes to that. The quicker you fail, the quicker you find out the no's, the quicker you have left with the remaining few yeses. And the more you can focus on those few yeses later on, that gives you the most unbelievable, concentrated, amazing experience that you deserve. But you have to get through the no's. Okay. This is really something I want to emphasize. Don't be afraid to say yes and then find out is a no. It is the only way to know, my friend. Nothing else. You can't just say, oh, someone told me. You always doubt yourself. Is it really? Or is it not? Because 20 people give you 20 opinion. Who are you going to believe? Believe none. Go try it for yourself. And you'll know. Right? And so if you ever want to be doing things that, we're doing our own thing, exploring your own path, then be prepared to go through these kind of different stepping stones, if you like. Not all stepping stones is going to lead you to that, illuminated destiny that is yours. But every one of them reveals whether you can go further or not. And I think that is something that I would like to emphasize and encourage for you to try.
I mean, it's very similar to a lot of. I remember when I was in corporate, there's always this idea of failing fast, right? The faster you fail, the more likely you'll find the right answer. And I think it's very scientific, actually. Not scientific as in it's well researched, but scientific as in its ideology. Because for every theory of relativity, there are so much base research that are telling us what is not the truth, right? This is actually one of those things that I do think most people forget when they're on the alternative path, because the assumption is that we're there to find what we want to do, which is ultimately still the truth. We are trying to find, like you say, that condensed experience that we will enjoy. But at the same time, in order to find that, the amount of failing that you have to experience is actually quite immense. And this is actually something that I want to share personally, because I mean, when I come out from my job, I mean, I tried Instagram, as in building an Instagram account. I tried to get funding to start a company. I tried to pursue the career in sports. I tried to, well, essentially become a gamer. There's actually a lot of things that I, well, end up telling myself that, you know what, this is not that. And people might regard that as a waste of time, but at least when I experienced it, I actually never felt it, because even though it was not ultimately what I wanted to do, the closure I get from trying, and the comfortness I have after trying that something and telling myself that this is not the one, helps me focus on finding new things. And one of the most uncomfortable truths that I have to face when I'm looking for things that I want to do is that none of the things that I thought I wanted to do was actually things that I want to do. Literally zero. All of it was actually that. So I am on so much that path that, I mean, at a point I was actually wondering if I was on the right track. Right. Obviously, I want the comfort back. I was uncomfortable. And that's actually where this reminder is necessary, because you think about because I failed so much, because I crossed out so much potential, and because I'm lost and I'm uncomfortable for the fact that I'm lost, I'm now looking for new things to try. I'm touching places that I would never have thought about doing. Podcast being one. I've never been camera, never been comfortable in front of a camera. I never like to uh, share my thought too much unless it's people that are very close to me. But because I'm so uncomfortable, and this is something that I can do, I jump onto the experience the moment I have a chance to, because what else am I gonna do? And that actually lands me to somewhere. Right now, I'm actually doing a podcast that I found meaningful, and not saying and I'm not saying it's successful, but I'm also learning how to edit video, thinking about different strategy to, well, at the very least, like, get more people to see the video. Whether they like it or not, that's not my problem. But I suppose I still need them to like it. That's another thinking. But and I land on somewhere that is actually at least a semi yes, right? And I think it sort of echoes back to what you have said in terms of you have to embrace the failing. You have to embrace the dead end.
It reminds me of a quote from Picasso about the meaning of life. And he said, the meaning of life is to find your talents. But that wasn't the complete quote. He then said, the purpose of life is to give them away. So there's two parts to it. There's a meaning and there's a purpose. And I like the way he separated the two things. To me, they are not the same thing. And I think to come up with that is one of those things that simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. I mean, how many different thoughts and experiences would he have to condense to then end up with those few words, right? And I think every single word means something. So meaning is to find your talents. Who needs to find? You need to find. It's no one else's job. No one can discover your talents. Only you can discover it by exposing it. Someone might respond to it. You didn't know that your talents actually create value in someone else's life. You didn't know someone actually would use that to benefit their life until you expose it. Before you do, you always think that, well, who's going to need this? Why would anyone find this interesting? That's what I think too, about me, about coaching, about playing music. You're not going to reach every single person. Not everyone is going to think you're the best thing since sliced bread. But who are you doing it for? If you're not doing it for yourself, well, then don't do it. No one's asking you to do it. And if you're doing it for someone else, your motivation is going to be correlated to whether that someone else is going to appreciate you, is going to, validate you, approve of you. And the minute they don't, you lose motivation. So personally, I wouldn't suggest doing it with that kind of mindset. I would do only those things that even if nobody asked me to do, I would still do it because I love doing it. And it's a very strange and silly thing to even devote your time to do something that nobody cares. And that only means one thing. You don't think you are somebody. When you say nobody cares, well, how about you? Are you somebody or are you nobody? When you say nobody cares, what you're saying is that you're nobody. Well, I can't stop you thinking like that, but I would beg to differ myself. I am as somebody as anybody, no more or less. So if I want to do something, it matters to at least one person, and that's me. I am a person. I don't look down on myself. I don't look up to myself. I look at myself as much as or as little as everybody else. I'm different, but I'm not special. I'm as different as everybody else is different in their own ways. And every one of us are different. Great. Glad to see it. Thank God it is. How boring if it is not. So if you are doing something for yourself, just to find your talents, that's the first step, isn't it? Just to find the talents. Well, what is my talent? I would say the talent is something that you like and you're good at the same time. And something that you're good at doesn't mean you're already world-class, but something that you're good at, you're more than happy to work on it, nurture it, to become much better than the average person. And you would find it a lot easier to do than the average person. And you're going to find it, enjoy it a lot more than the average person. That's how we would find the indicators. You know, Kevin, how do I find talents? My talent. Well, when you notice these things that are true, they're more probable that they are your talents, in my humble opinion. So once you've found that, I think it's a natural thing to nurture it. You just want to be doing more of it. And as you do more of it, the likely outcome is that whatever you're doing, you're going to improve in terms of quality and your understanding of it. You might be more creative about it, and it's just becoming your thing. And you come into your own, right? As a result of that. Then, well, what am I going to do with it? Well, according to Picasso, give it away. He didn't say sell it. He didn't say market it. He didn't say manufacture it. He just say give it away. Now, how does that make sense? How am I going to make any money by giving it away? Well, the way I would relate to that sentence is when you're exposing it to the world, in whichever way at the time of your life, right? Right now in our life, giving away in the way that it does, maybe through the internet, maybe through podcasts or whatever. Back in those times, maybe you have a little, thing on the street that you're doing some performance, or maybe you're just doing for free for the neighbors and your friends. That's what you mean. That's what I think it meant by giving it away. And by giving it away, you are exposing this experience to other people. And think about this. If you're on the receiving end of such a thing, and you derive value from that thing, what is your natural reaction to that thing? Well, I would say you'll be grateful that I gave it to you. You'll be thankful that I did. And you might tell your friends about what I do. And ultimately, if there are enough people who knows about it, but they're not my friend, and they still want that, I think the most natural human reaction to that is say, well, how can I reward you for this? Because I don't really have a close relationship. I don't feel good that you're just giving it to me for free because I value this. As a consequence of your value that you create in someone else's life, you receive a reward. And if there's nothing else that is more appropriate, then you get money. So I think this path is a strange one because it is the other way around. The main path is, okay, let's go for a job and say, okay, let me know how much money I'm going to get. And then I'm going to say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. I know how much I'm going to get by doing this. But this way, you have no idea. It's just a consequence of you doing something that actually creates a value that somebody wants. And I'm saying, if you have discovered your talents, okay, which means this thing is something that you do better than the average person, and you work yourself into doing it in such a way that it is better than the average person, people are not going to find this easily everywhere. It only exists in certain people. And if this thing creates a value, and you will know by people you give it away to, do they appreciate it? Did they come back and say, wow, you helped me with this? You know, you don't need to guess. And if you're really good at it, anyone who gets something that is good feel compelled to tell other people that they care about this, say, hey, maybe we should try it. Go back to your life. Think about any products that you use that you think is good. In the right situation, when someone asks you, would you recommend that product to them? You would, because in your personal experience, I've tried this, I tried this, this is the best up. But you're not charging them for it. You're just sharing an experience. It's a very common human trait. And all we're doing is following the laws of nature, following the basic fabric of social interaction in a society. How is that not mainstream? It is the most mainstream of mainstream. We're going back to the basic principle of fundamental core of human relationships. You perform your service, something that is of value to someone want to say thank you. They don't know how to do it for you. They don't have something to barter with you, something to do you with. You don't need them to cut your hair. So they say, oh, look, you know what? Why don't I give you some money? Then you can go buy whatever you want. Mainstream, very mainstream. So from that angle, I would say there is a very mainstream aspect to this, even though to the rest of the people, it is not a mainstream option. So it's not as weird as you think it is, right? Yeah, so please, yeah.
No, I think sometimes when we talk about traditional, non-traditional, mainstream, not mainstream, I think what we really mean is like whether it's popular or not. And I agree with what you say. Like the popular option at the end of the day is just what most people choose because it's less comfortable to choose otherwise, right? Like, but if you really break it down, like what we are doing right now to try to find a value that we want to give, find our talents, so to speak, is no more difference than what you are required to do when you are in a corporate job or not. But if anything, like my boss always used to come to me and say, well, you have to find your own brand, you have to find your own skill, you have to find your own footing so that you can survive in the industry. That's also what I'm doing right now. I'm finding my own brand, I'm finding my own footing, and the only difference is I'm not trying to survive in the industry. I'm not so that I will survive in the industry. I'm doing so that I can have a good life. Good as defined by me as have the freedom to explore and be satisfied. And so, like you say, it's actually not much different. Like you are required to do the same thing anyway. But are you doing it for money? In the sense that are you doing it under other people's constraints so that you grow in a way that can earn you money? Or are you doing it in a way that you yourself want to grow, but risk not being appreciated? There's always a risk. There is the market is not as kind as we want it to be. So long as you have value, you have a way to sell it. At the end of the day, you still need to learn how to market yourself. You still need to learn how to put it out there. I'm not talking about getting money. I'm talking about like actually sharing the talent. But more often than not, it will lead to a better result for yourself. So long as we can deal with the life stress of rent, food, and other things. If that part is satisfied, really, there's really no consequences. You should in pursuing, your talent for yourself. And most of the time, just by pursuing the talent for yourself, you already get a lot. Experience, knowledge, happiness, most importantly.